You know, this has been a wonderful day for me. This is my goodbye swan song to everyone. I'll still be around, but I won't be always in the pulpit nor on the chancel.
Maybe on your bike.
Say it again.
Maybe on your bike. Maybe on your bike.
Maybe on my bike. Oh, you know, you see me on the bike, huh? Yeah, okay, that's a conversation. We'll do that later. All right. Okay, so first of all, let me tell you, I'm retiring, but I'm not sick, and I'm not ill, with some illness or something like that. It is simply the fact that it's time. Your body just lets you know that. I'm 75, and I've been 50 years in ministry in some kind of way, ministry and social work, for 50 years of those 75 years, so it's about time, and 17 here. So I'm delighted that I can say that I'm healthy right now, although there is a issue that I have. I can't always remember words, and so I went to a neurologist, because I said, I can't get that word, that kind of thing. And then he tested me. He said, well, you don't have Alzheimer's, you don't have dementia. And in fact, he did thyroid testing too, same thing. He said, you're healthy. He said, let me take a wild guess. You seem to have a lot of information in your brain. I said, yeah, I read a lot. Yes, I do have a lot of information. He said, well, you're also blind. And I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, because you don't see the visual cues that will help you in recalling a word or a story or idea. So he said, just relax. It's going to be okay. And he actually told me, I had my son with me at the time, Brooks Davis, and he said to me, as a matter of fact, something that you might do in the future is do some freestyle rapping. I said, freestyle rapping? He said, yeah, that's good, because as your mind is moving real quickly. Well, it so happened that Brooks was driving me to this appointment, and we were freestyling in the car. I see the tree is big and green. I was doing my thing. So I'm trying to allow myself a little bit of levity, because it's difficult when you can't recall words. I've been here, as a matter of fact, and I couldn't recall, and I asked Reverend Marlon, and he went to the book to get it. That's embarrassing, church. That's embarrassing, but that's kind of going on. But that's not a big deal. But that's the only thing that's happening. And I'm appreciative for the fact that I have a good health, and that other than not remembering words, I'm pretty good. So that's one thing. Well, this is my farewell, my swan song. So I wanted to go back to the beginning, like how I became a minister in the first place. When I was at the University of Tulsa, my senior year, getting ready to graduate, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't have an idea. So I was kind of like, well, I could, but then again, things were going on. The war was going on. A lot of stuff was happening. And I was like, I don't know, it's a big world out there. What do I do? Well, a friend of mine told me, his name is Thad Holcomb. Thad Holcomb was the director of Canterbury Center for United Ministry, that's now called the Little Blue House. And all the misfits and the crazies, we went over there to Canterbury Center, and we had a good time. It wasn't just good time, but we did some good things. We did social justice things. We had a crisis center, all kinds of good things like that. Well, Thad said, well, you might want to, you don't know what you want to do, you might want to come with me to Ghost Ranch and Abiquiu. See, I did have options, though. I had first of all, an option. I was doing, I was in a social work class, and I was doing my placement at the Juvenile Bureau, and the people there said, we can give you a job right now. You're doing a great job. We want you to do that. Well, I wasn't quite sure that that's what I wanted to do. My brother was an attorney, and he wanted me to be a lawyer, so he wanted me to go to law school, and the law school was actually recruiting me. And they took me to classes, and I met the dean, and I said to the dean, do I have to take the law school admissions test? He said, yes, you have to take the LSAT. He said, but we want to give you a scholarship. We want you to come to this law school. So I had that option. And then my major was economics, and Dr. Lyle Owen was my favorite economics professor. And I saw him on the U. That was that big area, if you remember the way TU was laid out, right off of Delaware, just east of Delaware. And I was walking across campus, and Dr. Owen caught me and said, he talked like this. He said, Gerald? I said, yes, Dr. Owen. He pulled out this envelope and said, this is a tuition-free entry into State University of New York to get your MBA. I want you to get your MBA. And I said, Dr. Owen, I appreciate that, but I don't want to get an MBA. He said, okay. He put the envelope back and walked away, you know? So I had those options, Juvenile Bureau, law school, MBA in New York. So I didn't know what to do, and Thad's idea came back to me, well, go out to Abiquiu, New Mexico, to Ghost Ranch, and just chill, and maybe something will happen. Well, I did. I went to Abiquiu, New Mexico. We were the staff for the conference center, and I brought my saxophone. So I would go down into the Arroyo. That's a dry creek bed, you know, the great harmonics going on there, great sounds. And I would play my saxophone by myself, and the sounds would bounce off the walls. And I was doing that. Well, I finished one time. I was putting up my saxophone, putting it into the case. And I felt this voice. I say felt because people ask me if you heard it, was it a male or a female? And I don't, it wasn't like that. It was more like it came from inside. But this voice said, I love you. And, you know, that freaked me out because I thought, am I losing my mind? I was just blowing my horn. What did I do, you know? And then I was scared. And then I heard this voice that said, do my work. Well, at this point, I'm crying because I don't know what this is, and I'm scared. So I went back up to my room, and nobody was around. Usually staff were all young people. These were young people from all over the world. And usually they're hanging out, talking, you know. Nobody was around. So the next day, I went to Thad Holcomb, Reverend Thad Holcomb, and I told him what had happened. He said, have you thought about seminary? Me, seminary? No, no, not seminary. No, that's not me. He said, well, you ought to think about that. And I have a friend who teaches at McCormick Seminary in Chicago. Let me call him, and maybe you have a conversation. Well, we tried to get this guy for weeks. And it turned out that he was on sabbatical in Africa. So I said, okay, that's that for that. Then another student, a staff member, came to me and said, there's a guy who wants you to sit at his table. In the evening at Ghost Ranch, everybody sat at one place, whether they were the conference leaders or people who are there to learn, or the staff. We all sat together and ate and talked. So my friend said, he wants you to sit at his table. So he took me over there and pointed him out, and I went to him, and it turned out his name was Dr. David Buttrick. And Dr. Buttrick said, have a seat, and he said, I've been watching you. You're a leader. And I said, yeah, I was a drum major at University of Tulsa. I was in the student association, and I was who's who in American University. And he said, oh, that's good. All of that is good. He said, but have you thought about seminary? I said, wow. So I told him the story, what had happened. And he said, okay, Chicago is a big city. I grew up in Chicago, he said, but you may be like something a little smaller, like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I said, well, okay, just send me some information about Pittsburgh Theological Seminary. So he did. We said goodbye, and that was it. So I get this special delivery, the little truck comes trundling up to Ghost Ranch. They find Gerald Davis, and I get this letter, special delivery letter from Pittsburgh Theological Seminary, and it says, "Dear Mr. Davis, on the recommendation of Dr. David Buttrick, we're offering you a full tuition scholarship for Pittsburgh Theological Seminary." And I said, wow. So I found Dr. Buttrick, and I said, I get this letter. He said, yeah, and when you get to Pittsburgh, call me, and I will pick you up and take you to my house, to our home, my family, and then we'll drive you to the seminary. So I said, okay. So after spending time at Ghost Ranch, I got in my car, drove back home, and I told my parents, told my dad, I'm going to seminary, Dad. And he said, really? He said, now my father was the son of a minister. And he said, are you sure? And I said, no, I'm not sure. But I mean, these things happen to me, and it's just happened. I'm going to Pittsburgh. He said, okay, now this is in Sapulpa, Oklahoma. So my dad looked at me, and he said, if you're going to be a minister, be an evangelist, because the church will break your heart. Now, he was looking at that from his view, watching his father be a minister at different places. And I said, well, Dad, I don't know if the church is going to break my heart, but I'm going to find out. I'm going to seminary. He said, well, good luck. And I drove to Pittsburgh. And in those days, there were telephone booths. And I drove into the main area of Pittsburgh, went to the bus station, found a telephone booth, and I called David Buttrick. He came down, got me, and I followed him to his home, and I spent the night at his home. The next day, we drove to the seminary. He introduced me to people. They found a place for me to stay, and there you go. I said, wow, that was fast. All of a sudden, it happened. Well, church, people, when things like that happen, there's no reason that you can just go back and say, this is why it happened. I don't know to this day, but it happened, and I wound up in Pittsburgh. Well, around that time, Pittsburgh was a little small Presbyterian seminary. Our most famous alum was Fred Rogers. You may know him as Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. He was a seminarian. He was a minister. He had graduated from Pittsburgh Theological Seminary. So that was the most famous person who went there. It was a small little Presbyterian place, but they began to change. They had a new president and a new dean of faculty, and they said, we'll be open to the world. So they recruited folks from the West Indies, folks from Africa. They hired a guy who went through HBCUs, historic black and college universities. He went all through the South, and he got black folks. That seminary was melanated. I'm telling you, I had folks from Ghana, folks from South Africa. The South African didn't stay long though, because that was when apartheid was going on, so he had to go back. And he told me, I used to have Wednesdays, I would have lunch with him, and his name was Adamson. And he says, when I go back, they're going to kill me. And I said, what? He said, that's the way it is, and it's okay, because I will die fighting for freedom. And Adamson, I never left that in my heart, what he said. He knew he was going to die, going back to South Africa, because they were going to fight, not with guns, but just protests. But he knew he was going to die, but it was okay, because he knew what he was fighting for. Well, I'm telling you all this because all of this stuff came down on me, and I soaked it in. I mean, I was right there learning what it meant to really know and be a seminarian. Well, there was a plant in Pittsburgh called Western Electric where they built telephones. So you all don't know what telephones are, but it used to be they had to build the telephone case, and you pick up the phone and dial, that kind of thing. Rotary dial, okay. So they built these things in Pittsburgh. Well, Pittsburgh, the black workers at this Western Electric company did a wildcat strike because they were not hiring black people and they did not promote black people. So all the black folks there left, and they had their picket signs and they went on strike. Well, the seminary adopted those folk, and we provided food, money, clothing, support. We were right there with them in the newspaper. We were walking with them, striking with them, because it was about justice. And that was the thing we were headed for. That's what our seminary was about. We were bringing people from all over the world. And of course, we didn't let something like that stop us. So the people were who were picketing were very appreciative of us seminarians doing this. And so they said, on Sunday, will you preach a sermon? And they asked the folks, and they all turned to me. I don't know why. I'm brand new. But they turned to Reverend Gerald, probably because I had a mouth. I was always talking. So they said, okay, you get to preach. Well, I had never preached in my life. I had never made a sermon. I had not taken homiletics yet. I didn't know how to construct a sermon. I didn't know anything except they all chose me and said, Gerald, you preach it. So on the sidewalk of Western Electric plant, I preached my first sermon. I don't know what I said. I was shaking. I know that. I was shaking. And I preached, but the people appreciated that, and that kind of started me going. I started realizing, yes, I can. I may not know like some of these other folks know, but I know what's in my heart. And my heart says justice is most important. That is what you have to have. So that began my sojourn, so to speak. I finished seminary, and I got a master's in social work because I did a joint program so that it would take 5 years ordinarily, but it took 4 years because they accepted each other's credits. So I have a master's in divinity and master's in social work. And at the end of all that, the president of the seminary chose the speaker to speak at the last chapel. And usually that's an honor given to good students. I won't say I was a good student, but I definitely was out there. And so the president, William Cato, chose me to be the speaker. And I spoke about the things that brought me to that seminary. I spoke about the call to justice. You see, I believe that when we talk about what is required of us, I go back to the Hebrew scriptures. I go back to the Hebrew scriptures of Micah, 6th chapter, 8th verse. I go there because the word is, what does the Lord require of you? What does he require of you? Now, whether you believe or not believe, that's not important right now. What's important are these words that say requirement. So I'm looking at that. And what is required, the very first thing is do justice. It's not about all the things, dress real nice. It's not about that. It's not about be on time. You hear that? It's not about, no. It's about, are you doing justice? Do justice. It's not about anything other than do justice. I had that word spoken to me on my heart that says, do my work. That's the work. Justice. Why do I focus on justice? Because it's not only in the scripture, it's in our life. There are people who are treated wrongly. They didn't do anything but be who they are. And because of that, they are treated wrong. We have a country that enslaved folks and killed the indigenous people who were here. And then they say, we discovered America. That is not true. But what is justice is to tell the truth. So if you tell the truth, you're doing justice. Now, also, cherish doubt. Cherish doubt. We have a affirmation in our hymnals, number 650, that cherish the doubt. Why do we cherish doubt? Robert T. Weston, who wrote this affirmation, says, cherish doubt because doubt is attendant to truth. He said it's just like a staff to the blind. It's attendant to truth. Attendant to truth. If you are doubting, then you are trying to find the facts. And that's what we have to do. When we're doing justice, we're looking for facts. And the facts are people who are up against the wall because they are poor, because they may be melanated, because they're not on the right side of those executives in power. And so just injustice is done to them. Yes, I'm going to get political right now because it's important. Is that telling me I got to hurry up? Okay. Well, here's the thing, because I have to talk fast, but I want you to hear what I'm trying to say. It's not about, okay, this is my political party and I support my political party. I'm not talking about parties. I'm talking about justice, what is right. And what is right is that you don't do to people who are trying to help. You help them, people who are trying to do what they're trying to do. I'm not talking about the folks who may be putting a gun to your head saying, stick them up. But I'm talking about there's something about that person that needs help. But maybe that's not the time to give them help. But what is important is that we realize there are people out here who need us to help them. That's justice. I love the fact, and I go around and tell people what you do here when you give away your offering. I think every congregation should do that because when you're helping other folks, you're doing justice. These are the people who need. So doing justice is the number one requirement for my understanding of what is required of me as a human being on this planet, doing justice. The second thing is love mercy or love kindness. Now, it's not hard to love kindness, is it? But sometimes we do that. In the same field of justice, we ignore people who need our help. Not this congregation. Not this congregation. Because this congregation understands that, yes, help is, we're here. I have friends here. Joe Nuri, are you in here? Maybe not. Right, Joe Nuri put together a whole assembly line of people putting bags of food together to give to other folk. And I said, Joe, I want to help. Blind man wanted to help. Joe didn't say, but you blind, you can't do that. He said, come on. And he got me in that line. He showed me how the bags go. And he said, all you got to do is put 2 sacks in this bags and then move it on down the way, which I did. I had a good time because everybody doing it was enjoying doing it. So part of that is that Joe made it affable, that we want to do that together. But the other part is that you knew you were loving kindness. You were doing kindness, loving mercy. You were helping someone who didn't have food. And okay, let me say this. Anybody who would cut SNAP benefits, which is food, it's just outlandish. I worked for many years at Oklahoma Department of Human Services as a county director, helping people who needed SNAP benefits. I received the telephone calls when people said, I can't get my benefits, I don't have my benefits, I have my children. I had heard that voice. I know how those voices sound. We're talking about food, people. We're talking about food. If you can't help people and you're going to cut SNAP benefits because you want to balance the budget, or you want to cut Medicaid because you want to balance the budget, and this is what people need. That is heartless. That is heartless. So that's not doing kindness. That's something that, you're in trouble. That's what I would say. That's what I would say. Because doing kindness is the second requirement. Then the third requirement is walking humbly with your God. Now, I call God Spirit of Life and Love. I don't see a white man up there saying, I'm God. I can't go there. I can't go there. I can't go there. But what I do is that I know in you is this spirit of life and love. Every single one of you are those people that we call gods. That's you. You're gods. You're the You're the spirit. You have the spirit of life and love, and it's all in you. People who have that discernment, they can tell. They can tell folks who have that understanding, and they can talk to them. Now, sometimes folks take advantage of that. I was coming out of my church over at a Restoration the other Sunday, and there was a guy out in the parking lot, and I was with my administrative assistant, and she had dealt with him before, and he said, all I need is $3 to put gas in my car so I can go home. I ain't going no further than that, just $3 to put gas in my car. Well, I said, well, I got $3. So I pulled out 3 singles and gave it to him. And I said, where are you going to get the gas? He said, Quick Trip. I said, okay. So we got in my assistant's car, waited a little bit. We drove up to Quick Trip. His car wasn't there. And I said, I didn't feel bad about it. Not just because it's $3, but because whatever it was that was on him, my assistant told me in the past he has asked for money and we don't give him money. But the point is that he has something that is keeping him asking those questions. Now, I believe that young man right there, because I did trust him, is going to, whether he believes in me or not, I believe that spirit of life and love united with him, because he created a world that is difficult right now for him. And so I gave him $3. That was just $3. It wasn't $300. That was $3. So my thinking is, okay, now some people don't give money like that, and I understand why you don't. I understand. But I did, and I felt pretty good about it. Because that's the other thing. It's not about what they do with it, it's what you gave. It's you giving. You trusted him to be truthful. If he's not truthful, that's going to come back on him. But the spirit of life and love is in us. It is in all of us. My secretary used to say, well, assistant, administrative assistant, they're not secretaries anymore. My administrative assistant said, Reverend Gerald, you need to learn how to be humble. And I said, probably, but it's difficult for Reverend Gerald to be humble because I like to talk a lot. And when I talk a lot, I like to challenge people to go do their very best. And so, but she said, no, but people can hear you better if you are humble about who you do. So I play about I'm all this, but I'm not. I'm blind. And you would say, well, Reverend Gerald, you need people, and I do need people. But just because I'm blind doesn't mean I need to be humble. You would say, you would think he would, but I'm not. So, I have found myself many times outside walking with my cane, and people in Tulsa, Oklahoma say, do you need any help? It's a wonderful thing. The folks ask whether I need it or not. They ask, do you need any help? Because Tulsa is a loving kind of place. So I usually say, not right now, but we'll see. We'll see. So, the point I'm trying to get to right now, people, that I want you to understand is that whether you believe there is a God, believe that you are God, first of all. Believe that God is in you, that life and love that is in you. If you had a bad experience with all that like this, I understand. But right now, what we're talking about and what we need to know is that we are required to do the justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with each other. How about that? If we're humble with each other, trying very hard to be humble and not to be crazy about who we are, I think we can make it. So I just got a few more words, and then I'm going to sit down. Just a few more. Number one is that this has been a delight of my life to be part of All Souls. When Marlon invited me to come over here, New Dimensions had just arrived. And Marlon said to me, he called me up and said, Reverend Gerald, we have New Dimensions here, and I don't have any black people in leadership. Would you please come by and preach a little bit and teach a class now and then? I said, sure, brother, I'll do that. And it has been a delight in my life to be here all of these years, being with you. And as we grew together. And you learned a whole lot from me. I learned a whole lot from you. It is important for us to remember that we are interdependent people. We need each other. This is not about, yes, thank you. We cannot get crazy and say DEI means that the good white folks are being put down, because that is crazy. This is about, and don't get the okie doke. Don't go for that. Diversity is good. Equity is wonderful. Inclusion is necessary. We need to have that. And isn't it fun when you're around people who are different? Isn't it great? Because you learn so much. You learn and you say, well, I can do that. And because people want to share who they are with you, and you share that's the whole point. When we live and we're interdependent, then we grow and we get strong. And that's the strength that will deliver us into everything that is wonderful. Thank you so much, my people.